Have you ever wondered, if one day your children's eyes were forever dark, what would you do to light up their lives? Isaiah Carter, a wealthy businessman, lost all faith when his twins were born without the ability to see light. Money could not save them. Fame could not be exchanged for a ray of hope. But then, a simple black woman entered that house, Selena, a former nurse and housekeeper, with her hands and heart, brought about something no one expected. The children began to see. Is it a miracle, or just the power of love? And when a prejudiced society pointed its spear at them, Isaiah was faced with a choice: believe in cold science or believe in the human heart. If it were you, what would you choose? Join me in this painful yet healing story where light returns not only to the eyes, but also to the heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to join us on this journey. That night, the Carter mansion was quiet. Outside, the streetlights shone through the tall glass windows, but inside, the atmosphere was thick with emptiness. In the spacious living room, Isaiah Carter, the powerful black CEO, wearing a suit with his tie still on, stood silently in front of a family photo. In the photo, his late wife Maya smiled gently, her eyes shining, and the two children, Jordan and Jada, sat on their parents' laps. Now, Maya was gone. As for Jordan and Jada, since birth, their eyes had been pitch black. Isaiah closed his eyes, trying to swallow his sobs. He was a brilliant businessman, the one who had built a medical empire, the one the media had hailed as the Iron Man of Wall Street. But in his own home, he was powerless. No amount of money could buy light for his child's eyes. A child's voice said from behind Dad, "Is the sun warm?" Isaiah turned. Jordan was sitting by the window, his small hands fumbling with the edge of the blinds. Jada sat beside him, her face blank as she looked up at him. The two children were like two angels bound in the darkness. His son's question made his heart flutter. He walked over, sat down beside her, and placed his trembling hand on her shoulder. "Yes, the sun is so warm, like our mother's arms in the past." His voice was hoarse at this point. Jordan smiled softly, and Jada reached out to touch her father's face, as if trying to see through her tiny fingers. Isaiah felt his chest tighten. A powerful CEO, a famous millionaire, and now he craved something so simple for his child to see the light. The next day, a new character appeared in the Carter mansion: Selena Brooks, the newly hired maid. The black woman was in her 40s, with a strong figure, deep brown eyes, and a kind face. She used to work as a nurse at a community hospital, but due to family events, Selena had to leave and take a job as a maid to make a living. Selena was unlike the maids Isaiah had hired. She did not cringe or flatter. Instead, she spoke to the children with sincerity. As she fed Jordan milk, she told him stories of sunny gardens. As she brushed Jada's hair, she described the shape of the roses on the porch. Red roses, like the warmth when you hug someone tightly. Selena smiled. Jada giggled, imagining the story. Isaiah overheard the conversation, and something indescribable stirred in his heart. Over the years, he had hired only the best specialists and doctors, tried to impose a strict regime on his children. But no one had ever spoken to his children in such a familiar voice as Selena. A storm came out of nowhere on a weekend night. Thunder boomed. In the twins' room, Jordan jumped out of bed, clutching his head. Jada, shaking, called for her mother. Selena rushed over. She sat down between the two children and hugged them tightly. "It's okay. It's okay. I'm here." The thunder was just God beating his drum. She put her hand over Jordan's eyes. patting them gently, as if to soothe them. And then, Jordan paused. "Miss Selina, I see light." Selina froze, thinking she had misheard. But Jordan repeated, his voice trembling. There was a light, a sparkle. Jada also held her hand, choking. "I also see bright colors." Selina's heart pounded. How could this be for the past 10 years? Their eyes had been as still as the night. Could it be? The next morning, Isaiah returned from his business trip. He found the children chattering to Selina about the light they had seen. He frowned, suspicious. "You guys are imagining things." Jordan shook his head firmly. "I saw it. Dad, there was light. I knew it." Isaiah's eyes fell on Selina. In that moment, his heart wavered. How could an ordinary maid bring about something that the entire medical world had failed to do? Selina was silent, just holding the children. But deep down, she knew something had just begun. Isaiah stood still for a long time, looking into his son's eyes, listening to the familiar giggle that he had never seen so bright. A question arose in his heart, both fearful and longing. Is this a real ray of hope, or just a fragile illusion? Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the white curtains in Jordan and Jada's large bedroom. The two children lay in bed, their eyes as dull as ever. But their expressions were different. Jada whispered to her brother, her voice excited and a little confused. "Honey, yesterday I saw, like there was a candle in the room. Yes, I saw it too. It was dim, but not dark anymore." Selina heard it as soon as she entered. She stopped, her hands shaking as she held the tray of milk. She had never been so sure what the children had said last night was true, but listening to them talk like this filled her with an indescribable emotion. "Tell me, what was that light like?" Selina gently placed the milk tray on the table and sat on the edge of the bed. Jordan hesitated, then used his hands to describe it. "It was like a circle of light, white, right in front of me." Jada interrupted. "I saw a flash of light like when someone opens a window, and then it went away." Selina was silent, her eyes red. Maybe it was her imagination, but she had been a nurse. She knew these children were not liars. She bent down and stroked their hair. "If there is a glimmer of light, it means the darkness is not absolute. And then we have hope." From that day on, Selina quietly began her own unusual therapy sessions. No medicine, no medical equipment, just her warm voice and her hands. Every night before bed, she placed her hands on the children's eyes, gently rubbed them, softly sang old lullabies, and told simple stories about life outside, about the blue sky, about the golden autumn leaves, about the Hudson River sparkling in the sun. Jada would listen, then ask softly, "If I could see tomorrow, would I get to see lots of roses?" "Yes, baby. You would see a whole garden of roses in full bloom every time this happened." Selina felt the corners of her eyes heat up. She couldn't promise anything for sure, but she knew that belief was nurturing something in the children's souls. Isaiah noticed the change too. One afternoon, he walked into the room and saw Jordan and Jada giggling. Jada was reaching out to touch the light coming through the window. "Dad, is that place brighter than this one?" Jada asked. Isaiah paused, not knowing how to respond. He looked at Selina, his eyes filled with suspicion. "What did you do to the children?" Selina said calmly, her voice calm. "I didn't do anything. Mr. Carter, I just told them stories. That's all." Isaiah nodded, but his heart was in turmoil. He remembered what the doctor had said, "Their eyes will never see." So why were they now aware of the light? Was it just an illusion, or a fragile belief, he feared he would be drawn into a spiral of hope and disappointment. That evening, sitting alone in his study, Isaiah turned on his computer and reviewed his old medical reports. He tried to push away all the irrational thoughts, but then the voice in his wife's memory rang out again. Don't just trust the numbers, Isaiah. Trust the human heart. He closed his eyes, his heart in turmoil. Meanwhile, in the twins' bedroom, Selena continued. Jordan placed her hand on hers and whispered, Auntie, I saw a shadow pass through the door today. It was blurry, but I was sure of it. Selena paused. She had never dared to believe so far. She just nodded and said, Good. Jordan, keep that image in your mind. It will become clearer each day. The next day, something unexpected happened. During breakfast, while Isaiah was reading the newspaper, Jada suddenly pointed at him. Dad is wearing a dark shirt. The spoon in Isaiah's hand fell to the table. He stared at his daughter. What? What did you say? Your shirt is dark. Not as bright as the tablecloth. Isaiah was speechless. He couldn't believe it. Selena just bowed her head, didn't say anything, but her hands were shaking. The news was not to be spread. Isaiah kept it to himself, both happy and confused. He feared that if the public knew, people would mock or exploit it. Especially Harold Whitmore, his arch-rival in the business world who was always waiting to take him down, would not miss the opportunity to turn the story into a joke. Over the next few days, Isaiah observed more closely. He saw Jordan begin to recognize shapes, and Jada recognize basic colors. They described them in naive but confident words. Dad is tall like that long shadow. Selena walked in and a circle on the wall lit up. Every time he heard this, Isaiah's heart sank. Part of him was overjoyed, and the other part was filled with doubt. Could this be true? Was it just a coincidence or a child's imagination? Selena, on the other hand, remained calm. She did not show off, nor did she force. Every evening, she continued her storytelling sessions, letting the children listen, see in their minds, and feel with their hands. She said, the eyes are not only in the face, but also in the heart. When you believe, your eyes will open. Isaiah heard that and felt a choking sensation. For years, he had used reason and power to control everything, but perhaps what he lacked was trust. He wondered, am I also blind? Not in my eyes, but in my heart. That night, Isaiah sat in his study for a long time. He thought back to when Maya was alive, how she held her child and told stories in her gentle voice. Now, Selena was doing the same thing. He didn't want to admit it, but the sight of it brought him peace, a sense of home he thought he had lost. Outside the window, the moonlight fell faintly. Isaiah stood still, a doubt rising in his heart. Should he believe, or should he doubt? If he believed, he could lose everything if everything was just an illusion. But if he did not believe, he would kill the hope that had just begun to flicker in his son's eyes. In that moment, Isaiah felt like he, a powerful CEO, who had made millions of dollars worth of decisions, was helpless before the simplest choice whether to trust or not to trust a maid. Outside, in the small room, Selena still sat singing lullabies to Jordan and Jada. The two children giggled, painting with words what they vaguely saw. In the quiet night, her song echoed like a prayer, carrying a fragile ray of hope, but brighter than any lamp. Mornings at the Carter estate usually began with the sound of Isaiah's car engine driving him to work, followed by a heavy silence. But lately, the silence seemed to have changed a little. In the dining room, Jordan and Jada had begun to get more excited. They no longer sat quietly listening to the sound of spoons hitting plates. Jada would occasionally raise her head, smile, and say, "I saw a shadow pass by." Jordan insisted that he recognized a flash of light when the door opened. Selena always sat nearby, encouraging them to describe it as much as possible. Isaiah watched, conflicted. He felt a surge of joy as his children seemed to understand the world, but he repressed it, fearing it was all an illusion. He remembered the times the ophthalmologists shook their heads and said their vision could not be improved. The conflict often made him frown, and the staff at home held their breath. One afternoon, Isaiah left the office earlier than usual. He stood behind the glass door of the living room and saw Selena sitting on the rug with the children, holding hands. She described the front garden to them, the bright red tulips, their petals open in the rising sun. In the distance, a white angel. Jada frowned and said slowly, "I see red." "Not like dark anymore," Jordan added. "There's a light by the door." Isaiah felt his heart pounding. He opened the door and stepped inside, startling all three of them. He said nothing, just watched. Jada smiled, turned to her father, and said, "I know you're there." That simple sentence was like a knife slashing straight into Isaiah's defensive wall. He wanted to believe it, but the fear of repeating disappointment held him back. He coughed softly, his voice low. "It might just be a feeling. Don't believe it yet." But even as he said it, he could hear the trembling in his voice. That night, Isaiah sat alone in his office filled with medical books and thick research reports. He looked at a picture of Maya. She was smiling, holding her two children when they were just a few months old. He remembered what she had whispered Isaiah. "Sometimes you only see the world in numbers. See with your heart, too." He clenched his pen. The words, a distant echo, echoed in his head. In another part of the story, Selena also struggled with herself. She knew what was happening beyond common sense. As a former nurse, she understood the human body. But when she put her hands on the children's eyes, she felt something strange, as if her love and patience were awakening something deep within them. Some nights she sat silently for hours, wondering, am I just holding on to false hope? If everything goes wrong, who will be responsible for their pain? The next morning, a small but meaningful event occurred. During breakfast, Jordan suddenly pointed to the curtain and said, "The light is too bright." Isaiah turned around, realizing just in time that the morning sunlight was shining through the gap in the curtain, shining directly into the boy's eyes. He stood there, dumbfounded, his spoon falling to the table. Selena didn't say anything, just put her hand on Jordan's shoulder, encouraging, "Describe it." Jordan smiled brightly, describing it in naive but confident words. "It was brighter than anything. It made me blink." Isaiah had to admit it couldn't be a random imagination anymore. His son was truly sensing the light. Joy welled up, but at the same time, so did anxiety. If he believed this, he would have to face a skeptical society, especially those who were waiting for an opportunity to bring him down. That afternoon, Harold Whitmore happened to drop by the company during a board meeting. Harold looked at Isaiah with a provocative gaze and said sarcastically, "I heard rumors that you found a miracle in your house. A maid can do what medicine cannot. You must believe in fairy tales too much." The whole meeting room burst into laughter. Isaiah remained silent, clenching his fists, but did not object. He understood that with just one wrong sentence, the whole story would be twisted into a joke. That night, When he came home, he found Selina teaching the children about colors with small balls. Jada held the red ball, smiling brightly. "I know this one is bright. Not like that one," Jordan insisted. "The green one is darker." Looking at her smile, Isaiah felt his chest tighten. He knew that, despite the skepticism of the world outside, a flame of hope was burning in this house. In silence, he retreated behind the door, not letting anyone see his eyes moisten. He whispered, as if to his dead wife Maya, "Maybe you're right. Maybe I need to learn to trust once more." Selina also noticed Isaiah's eyes as he walked away. She knew that the once Iron Man was beginning to waver. She didn't need the acknowledgement, but she knew that as long as he was standing there, listening to her laughter, the glimmer of hope would not be extinguished. In the quiet of the night, after the children had gone to sleep, Isaiah sat alone in the garden. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of jasmine. He remembered the moment Jada had said, "I know you're standing there." That seemingly unintentional statement shook him more than any business deal he had ever experienced. He muttered, as if in confession, "If this is true, then my whole life, all my power, all my fame, would be meaningless." News of the Carter twins' strange transformation gradually leaked out, starting from whispers among the staff. A curious gardener told his wife that the children seemed to see light. His wife told a church acquaintance, and soon rumors spread throughout the local community. Isaiah Carter's child cured of blindness by the hands of a colored maid. The half-truth, half-fiction story caused both surprise and ridicule among the public. Isaiah began to notice curious looks when he appeared at public events. At a fundraising dinner, a businesswoman laughed and asked, "Are you going to open a center to cure blindness by magic?" The laughter made him feel like he had been doused with cold water in front of everyone. He just clenched his glass of wine, trying to maintain his composure. But deep inside, his heart was in turmoil. When he got home that night, he went straight to his office without saying goodbye to anyone. Selina was still awake, sitting in the living room with the children, when she heard the thud of a file on the table. She walked over and saw Isaiah sitting there, his face tense. He looked up, his voice choked. "I can't let people think we're relying on superstition. You know, Selina, they've been waiting for me to slip up and take me down. Now they have the perfect excuse." Selina was silent for a moment, then replied softly, "People may laugh, but they don't live in this house. They don't hear Jada laugh. They don't see Jordan blink in the sunlight. Mr. Carter." The truth sometimes begins as a story that everyone thinks is ridiculous. Isaiah was stunned by the words. He knew she was right, but his pride and his habit of controlling kept him from letting go easily. In the days that followed, the twins continued to improve. Jordan could make out the faint outlines of large objects, and Jada began to recognize her father's face as he approached. They both squealed with delight at the multicolored dots of light from the chandelier hanging overhead, a joy that gradually lifted the fog of despair that had shrouded the house for years. But at the same time, the undercurrent began to rise. Harold Whitmore, a rival in the business world, hired someone to investigate Selina. He wanted to find a loophole, an unusual past to turn the story of the maid who cured blindness into a ridiculous scandal. One afternoon, Harold came to Carter Holdings, leaving a file on Isaiah's desk. In it, Selina's entire past was revealed. She had been a nurse at a small hospital, but quit after a lawsuit related to a patient's death. Isaiah flipped through the pages, his heart pounding. Harold smiled faintly. "You see, No one wants to hear about a woman with a shady past touching their child's eyes. If I spread this story, what will happen to your reputation? What will happen to the company's stock? Isaiah sat still, his eyes dark. He knew Harold wasn't joking. But when he got home and saw Selina sitting in the middle of the living room, the two children chattering away about what they saw, he suddenly realized if he turned his back on this woman, it would be like extinguishing the flame of hope that was burning brightly in the family. That evening, he called Selina into his office. Without looking directly at her, he placed the file on the table. "Do you want to explain?" Selina looked down, was silent for a moment, then said softly, "Yes, I lost a patient, a boy with a heart defect. I did my best, but the operation failed. The family did not accept it, and the hospital pushed all the responsibility onto me. I no longer had a place in the medical profession. Since then, I have done anything to make a living, but I have never forgotten the oath I took when I put on my white coat to put human life first." Her voice trembled, but her eyes remained straight. Isaiah sat silently, his heart struggling. He knew Harold would not let this opportunity pass, but he also knew that no one had ever been so patient and loving towards his son. He closed his eyes slightly and said, "Your past may have been taken advantage of by others, but now you have given my children something that money and power cannot buy. I need you to continue." Selina looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and concern. She knew this was only the beginning of the real storm. And it was true. A few weeks later, a tabloid broke the news Carter twins cured of blindness by Maid with shady past. The article caused an immediate stir. Social media was flooded with derisive comments. Some called it the hoax of the century. Carter Holdings' stock plummeted within hours. Isaiah sat in his office, the phone ringing, his advisors anxiously urging him to deny it. But as he looked at the picture of his son plastered across the newspaper screen, he suddenly understood this was more than just a battle for prestige. This was the moment he had to decide what to believe. That night, in the living room, Jordan and Jada gushed to Selina about how they could see the moon outside the window. Selina hugged them, tears welling up in her eyes. Isaiah stood on the stairs, watching the scene, suddenly filled with peace. He knew, despite the gossip outside, in this house, something truly miraculous was happening. And for the first time in years, he whispered a prayer, "Maya, if you're out there, give me the strength to protect this." Isaiah had trouble sleeping for several nights after the bombshell article. His office was filled with the blue light of his computer screen, free-falling stock charts, and a steady stream of emails from investors. He read, deleted, and read again. But all of it only made his chest feel heavier. In the most suffocating moment, he suddenly heard a high-pitched laugh from downstairs Jada and Jordan. They were playing a guessing game with Selina. "I see yellow, like the sun," Jada exclaimed. Isaiah closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The sound pulled him back from the abyss, reminding him that what mattered most was not on the computer screen, but in this house. The next day, Isaiah decided to call a closed-door meeting with the board. Some familiar faces looked confused, and some advised him to end his relationship with Selina immediately to save his reputation. A cold voice rang out. "We need a press release denying everything. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, but if you let this story spread, no one will trust you to run the company." Isaiah was silent for a long time, his hands tapping on the dark wood table. Then he slowly said, "You see danger, but I see opportunity. If my child truly has hope, it's not a scam. I will not deny the faith growing in my own home. Several members of the executive board sighed in disappointment. Some shook their heads and left the room. But Isaiah's determined gaze still had a strength that the others could not argue with. Meanwhile, Selina was under great pressure. The press even followed her when she went grocery shopping, prying into her past, labeling her a witch maid. One night, she sat alone in her small attic room, her hands trembling on her knees. She remembered the time when she lost everything: her medical reputation, her job, her belief in herself. Now, she was facing another storm. But then, there was a gentle knock on the door. Jada entered, holding a piece of paper with a sketch of a sun scribbled on it. "I drew this for you, because you are the one who brings us light." Selina burst into tears, hugging her tightly. The next day, an incident occurred. Harold Whitmore, not missing the opportunity, held a public press conference. In front of the camera, he emphasized a multi-billion-dollar corporation, like Carter Holdings, leaves the fate of its children in the hands of a maid who was involved in the death of a patient. This is not only a family tragedy, it is irresponsible to shareholders. The whole hall echoed with whispers. When the news reached Isaiah, he knew he could no longer remain silent. That night, he sat across from Selina in the living room. The dim light revealed the tired lines on both their faces. "Selina," he said slowly, "are you ready to face the public? Not run away, not hide. Tell them the truth about your past, including the pain, but also what you did to my children." Selina was stunned for a moment, then nodded slightly. "If that's the way to protect the children, I will do it." And so, a press conference was arranged right on the grounds of Carter Villa. That day, the sky was gray. The clouds were thick, as if signaling a storm. Dozens of reporters crowded at the gate. When Isaiah and Selina stepped out, the atmosphere was tense and silent. Isaiah opened his mouth. "You have heard too many rumors. Today, I want to let the people involved speak in their own voices." Selina stood up on the podium, her hands shaking slightly, but her eyes were determined. She told the whole truth about the past, about the failed incident at the hospital, about the years of suffering, contempt, and distrust. Then she said, her voice choked, "I can't change the past, but I know. Every day I was with Jordan and Jada, I saw in their eyes something that medicine couldn't explain. I'm not asking you to believe me right away. I'm just asking you to come here and see for yourself." Immediately after that announcement, Isaiah brought Jada to the podium. In absolute silence, she smiled, then blinked into the camera lights and said in a clear voice, "I see the light." The small sound was like a thunderclap that tore through the air. The reporters were stunned. Several cameras zoomed in on Jada's face, capturing her clear eyes. The press conference exploded on national television. Some were skeptical. Others were moved to tears. But no one could deny something had really happened in the Carter house. That night, Isaiah sat by the window, watching the city lights in the distance. He knew the battle with Harold and public opinion was far from over. But inside, he felt lighter than ever, because he had chosen truth over fear. And that made him feel closer to Maya than ever. After the shocking press conference, public opinion was clearly divided into two camps. One side saw Isaiah as a brave father who dared to stand up for the truth and believe in miracles. The other side was sarcastic, claiming that it was all just a publicity stunt. Harold Whitmore added fuel to the fire by paying several medical experts to appear on television, bluntly declaring, "There is no scientific evidence that a maid can make a child born blind see the light. This is a hoax." The news spread like an oil slick, and many shareholders began to waver. Isaiah returned home with a heavy heart. He closed the door to his office, leaving his phone vibrating on the table. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a tired face, dark circles under his eyes. He remembered what Maya had said Isaiah. Sometimes the most important thing is not how much evidence you have, but whether you have the courage to believe. Those words were like a knife to the softest part of him. He whispered in silence, "Maya, if you were still here, would you choose to believe or give up?" Meanwhile, Jordan and Jada began to show more obvious progress. Jordan could walk down the stairs for the first time without holding on to the handrail. Jada excitedly pointed to a painting hanging in the living room, describing, "I see blue and white like the sky." Selena could not hide her emotions, but she was also afraid because she knew that public opinion would become more harsh if there was no clear explanation. One morning, as Isaiah was getting ready for work, Jada suddenly walked over and placed her small hand on his. "Dad, don't be sad. I saw you." Those words made him stop, his heart aching. Her clear eyes looked up at him, no longer a blank void, but filled with trust. Isaiah bent down and hugged his child tightly, but at the same time, tears fell, because he understood that he still didn't have enough courage to believe completely. Not long after, an event brought things to a head. One weekend morning, Isaiah received an invitation to a closed-door hearing before the board of directors. He knew that this time they wanted to question him not only about the stock situation, but also about the family story that was shaking public opinion. When he entered the room, dozens of cold eyes turned to him. An older member spoke up. "Mr. Carter, this company is not a place for you to turn into a stage for mythological stories. We need a CEO, not a missionary." Isaiah sat up straight, his voice low but firm. "I am not a preacher. I am a father. I am not asking anyone to believe in miracles. I am simply saying that there are things that science cannot explain. And if you laugh at us and then have to admit that we may have been wrong, that is not a shame. The shame is in denying the truth when it is right in front of us." The room fell into a heavy silence, but he knew the battle was long, and Harold would certainly not stop. Sure enough, a few days later, Harold released a video montage showing Selena holding Jada's eyes in a dark room, with a malicious comment, "Look at this cheap magic trick." The video went viral, causing many people to criticize the Carter family even more. Selena was devastated, locked herself in her room, and did not want to see anyone. That night, Isaiah knocked on the door. He walked in and saw Selena sitting on a chair, her hands covering her face. He approached and said, "You are not alone. You gave my child what no one else could. Don't let anyone else take that away from you." Selena looked up, tears streaming down her face. "But if everyone turns their backs on us, who will believe in us?" Isaiah looked her straight in the eyes and said softly, We just have to believe." There was a moment of silence. Then they both heard the children's giggles from the next room. Jada exclaimed, "I see a star on the ceiling." Jordan joined in. "And I see Dad in the mirror." The sounds were like a baptism, washing away all doubt, leaving only faith. Isaiah decided to fight back. He allowed a team of independent doctors into the house to check. The doctors were skeptical at first, but after days of observation, they couldn't deny it. Jada and Jordan were indeed progressing beyond expectations. One of them exclaimed, "I can't explain it, but I can't deny it." When the report was published, public opinion was once again stirred up. Some people began to think differently, maybe, sometimes, Love can create miracles that science has not yet reached. Late at night, Isaiah sat in the garden, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. He missed Maya more than ever, and for the first time in years, he smiled without forcing himself. Maya, can you see? Our child is seeing the light, and I am seeing the light in my heart again. After the independent team of doctors announced their observations, the whole country was in an uproar. Many mainstream newspapers began to report more objectively, no longer mocking like before. Several major TV channels invited Isaiah to participate in live interviews, but he refused. He understood that, at this time, words were not as important as what Jordan and Jada's eyes were telling. However, the pressure did not lessen. Harold, like a cornered animal, became more aggressive. He hired lawyers to file a lawsuit, accusing Isaiah of using deceit to manipulate the stock market. Isaiah sat in a conference room with his team of lawyers. One of them, a young but tense-faced man, said, "Mr. Carter, this lawsuit could drag on for years and affect the entire corporation. If we don't prove that this isn't a sham, the consequences could be dire." Isaiah leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling. He was torn. He knew he had no hard scientific evidence to back him up, only his own convictions and what he had seen with his own eyes. Would that be enough to fight the massive legal apparatus Harold had built? Meanwhile, at the Carter house, Jordan and Jada were making progress. One morning, when Selena opened the window, the light flooded in. Jordan suddenly covered his eyes and giggled. There was too much light. I had to close my eyes. Jada shyly boasted I saw roses in the garden. They were so beautiful. Selena burst into tears and hugged the two children. She always recorded those moments on her phone, as if to keep the most vivid evidence for the future. One late afternoon, when Isaiah returned from a long day at the office, he found Jada sitting on the stairs, practicing drawing with crayons. When he walked over, she looked up, her eyes shining with a trembling light. "Dad, I'm drawing you." On the paper was a clumsy drawing, the lines distorted, but clearly the figure of a tall man. Isaiah stood there, his heart clenched. He knelt down, hugging his daughter, tears streaming down his face, which was so accustomed to being tough. But the short-lived peace was quickly shattered. One day, while Isaiah was at his office, his phone rang. Selena was on the other end of the line. Panicked Mr. Carter, there are strangers hanging around the house. I saw a man with a camera trying to film the kids. Isaiah immediately left the meeting and rushed home. When he arrived, he found the police holding a freelance reporter who said awkwardly that he just wanted to unearth real evidence. That incident made Isaiah realize the war was no longer limited to the boardroom or the media. Now, his children were being targeted in public. That night, he stood on the balcony, looking at the city lights in the distance, his heart heavy. Maya, how can I protect our children? Do I have the strength? Selena stepped forward and quietly placed her hand on his shoulder. Mr. Carter, I lost everything too, but one thing I learned is that when love leads the way, we are stronger than any force. The children not only need protection, they need to see that their father dares to fight for the truth. Isaiah was awakened by those words. He realized that all his life, he had been used to fighting for profit and power. But this time, the battle was not for the company, but for the future of two little creatures. A turning point came the following week, when one of the doctors who had observed the children spoke out on national television. I can't explain it scientifically, he admitted, but I've seen Jada and Jordan identify light and color with my own eyes. We may not have figured it out, but to deny it is to deny the obvious. The announcement rang a bell, setting off a new wave of debate. Other experts began to soften their stance, admitting more research is needed. Harold was furious. He began to resort to personal tricks, spreading rumors that Isaiah had hired Selena to perform a miracle in exchange for a large sum of money. These vicious fabrications put Selena under terrible pressure. One evening, she packed her things, intending to leave to free the Carter family. But as she dragged her suitcase down the stairs, Jordan and Jada hugged her legs, tears streaming down her face. "Selena, don't leave us. Without you, we'll be back in the darkness." Her plea made her collapse and burst into tears. Isaiah stepped forward, determined. "You're not going anywhere. This is your home, as well as ours." At that moment, the Carter family truly became one. No longer just master and servant, but a family united by faith and love. The public opinion outside was still stormy, but in this house, the light spread more and more each day. Isaiah gradually realized the miracle lay not only in the eyes of his children gradually opening, but also in his own heart, a place that, for the first time in many years, knew how to tremble before fragility, knew how to open to receive faith instead of closing it off in pride. On the first day of Harold's trial against Isaiah, the courthouse was packed with reporters. Dozens of people held signs outside the door. One side chanted, "Miracles don't happen." Another held pictures of Jada and Jordan, urging, "Let the kids live in the light." The chaos forced Isaiah to hold his son's hand in the car to calm himself before entering. Selena sat next to him and whispered, "Don't look at the crowd. Look at the truth in your heart. In the courtroom." Harold sat across from him, his face arrogant. His lawyer opened with a venomous tone. "We are talking about a fraud that was orchestrated to enhance the image of a CEO, cause stock volatility, and affect thousands of shareholders. This is not a touching family story. This is a fraud." Isaiah listened with a pang in his heart, but he remained silent. When it was his turn, his lawyer showed the family video footage, Jordan walking down the stairs without holding hands, Jada pointing to pictures with different colors. The room erupted, but immediately, Harold's lawyer snapped back. Children can memorize directions, can listen to prompts to answer. That's not scientific evidence. The court became tense. Isaiah was called to the podium. He stood there, facing dozens of cameras, his voice low. "I am not a doctor. I cannot explain. But I am a father. I saw my children smile when they first saw light. I heard them scream when they recognized color. You can call it an illusion, a lie. But if a father is not allowed to believe in the true happiness of his child, then what justice can there be?" There was a long silence. Some people in the crowd wiped away tears, but Harold gripped the arms of his chair tightly, his eyes blazing with anger. Outside of court, the pressure mounted. Every time Isaiah returned home, he found paparazzi lurking outside the gate. Some close investors called, asking him to categorically deny the miracle to save the company. Isaiah was exhausted, sometimes on the verge of collapse. But every night, when he heard Jada read aloud the first lines of the letter under the study lamp, he gained strength. "Dad, the letter B looks like a little tree." Her words were like a life-giving medicine. Selena struggled with fear, too. She knew that every day, as she passed the crowd outside her gate, the contemptuous eyes seemed to swallow her whole. Once, one shouted, "A murderer disguised as an angel." The words made her tremble. But when she returned home and saw Jordan holding her hand and whispering, "If it weren't for you, I would still be in the dark," she forced a smile. In the second trial, Harold played his trump card. He showed the edited video he had circulated, claiming it was evidence of Selena's deliberate hallucination. The courtroom erupted. Isaiah's lawyer countered that the video had been doctored, but suspicion reigned. It was during this tense moment that a witness suddenly stood up, one of the doctors who had been observing the Carter home. He asked permission to speak. "I am a scientist. I do not believe in miracles. But I have seen progress beyond reason. I cannot remain silent when the truth is distorted. These children are truly changing." His words brought a hush to the room. Harold tried to interrupt, but the confidence in the doctor's eyes made the jury waver. That night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Isaiah felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: a unity. Jordan bragged about how he could pour himself a drink without spilling it. Jada held up her notebook, showing off her first scribbles. Selena sat next to him, tears in her eyes. Isaiah looked around, saw a real family, not a luxurious empty house. "Maya, you see," he whispered to himself, "we're on the right track." But the storm was not over. Late at night, while Isaiah was working, he received an anonymous call. "If you do not give up, the children will pay." The cold voice made him break out in a cold sweat. He immediately called the police and increased security around the house. Fear gripped him, but he also knew it only proved that the truth was making his enemies tremble. The next day of the trial, Isaiah decided to let Jada and Jordan appear in person. Many people objected, saying it was risky, but he believed that only the innocence of children could overcome all doubts. When Jada was let in, she smiled brightly, pointing to the ceiling chandelier. "The light is so beautiful." Jordan innocently pointed to the lawyer's shirt. "It's green, like the plants in the garden." Those words could not have been made up or taught in advance. The whole courtroom was stunned. A few jurors looked at each other and nodded slightly. Harold was furious, his face red, but he had no strong arguments left. For the first time, Isaiah felt the scales of justice tilting in his favor. That night, he sat alone in the garden, the sky full of stars. Selena came out, carrying a blanket. They both sat in silence for a while. Then Isaiah said softly, "I used to think power was money. Power. But now I realize real power is protecting the people you love, even when the whole world turns its back on you." Selena smiled and replied, "And sometimes power is daring to believe, even when that belief makes you a laughingstock." In that moment, Isaiah saw in Selena's eyes the same determination that Maya had before. He suddenly understood perhaps the miracle lies not in the hands, but in the heart that knows how to love and never gives up. The final trial took place in an atmosphere of unprecedented tension. Hundreds of people crowded outside the courthouse, protesters, supporters, all waiting for the outcome. Isaiah walked into the courtroom, his face calm, but his heart was in turmoil. He knew that today would not only decide the fate of his family, but also confirm whether faith could overcome doubt, or everything would fall apart. Harold's lawyer opened with a lengthy statement, highlighting the economic losses, the loss of stock value, and the assertion that the miracle story was a PR stunt. The cold words froze the courtroom, but Isaiah did not respond with anger. When it was his turn, he simply said, "I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for justice to see the truth. The truth is right here." He turned and gestured to Selena. Selina stepped onto the stage. The woman, accustomed to standing behind the scenes, now became the center of attention. Her voice trembled slightly but firmly. I am not a doctor. I have no formula. I just care for two children with all my love. I believe that it is love that awakens the light in them. That seemingly simple statement made many people in the audience sit in silence. Suddenly, Attorney Harold threw the file on the table and asked the court to call a special witness, a famous neurologist. The professor stepped in and asserted, "There is no medical data to prove recovery. Scientifically, this is impossible." The crowd was in an uproar, their hopes dashed. Isaiah looked at Jada and Jordan sitting in the back seat, their bright eyes giving him strength. He stepped forward, faced the professor, and asked, "You say it's impossible, but have you seen my children with your own eyes? Have you heard their laughter as they saw the sky for the first time? Science is great, but has it ever caught up with the power of the human heart?" The question echoed through the courtroom. The professor paused, unable to answer immediately. At that moment, the unexpected happened. Jordan, the once shy boy, stood up. His voice rang out, young but clear. I saw that he was wearing a gray shirt. I saw it clearly. The courtroom exploded. The camera panned to Jordan, whose innocent face proved what a series of documents could not deny. Harold turned pale and quickly stood up. This is a setup. The child is trained to lie. But at that moment, another witness stepped forward, Kevin, the former security guard that Harold had fired. He presented to the court the recordings of phone calls in which Harold discussed spreading fake news and hiring people to smear Selina and the Carter family. The truth fell like a hammer blow. The whole courtroom exploded. The judge banged his gavel, announcing that all charges against Isaiah and his family would be dismissed. At the same time, Harold would face charges of slander and tampering with evidence. There was applause and cheers. Isaiah stood still, not gloating, but feeling a warm current rising in his chest. He turned to Selina, held her hand tightly, and whispered, "We've come all the way." That day, the press reported everywhere. Carter miracle became the hottest keyword. But for Isaiah, the miracle was not the light in his son's eyes, but the fact that his family had found each other again. That evening, the whole family sat on the porch, and Jada exclaimed, "The sky is so full of stars tonight." Jordan leaned his head on Selina's shoulder and giggled. "Now I'm not afraid of the dark anymore." Isaiah looked at the two children and saw Maya smiling somewhere. He closed his eyes and promised himself from now on, this family would no longer have to live in darkness, be it the darkness of blindness or the darkness of prejudice. That spring, the Carter mansion lit up in a completely different way. Gone were the quiet hallways, the heavy curtains drawn to hide the sadness. Instead, every window was open to the sunlight, the laughter of children echoing through the rooms. Isaiah Carter walked slowly down the stairs, saw Selina sitting with Jada and Jordan at the kitchen table, the three of them busy cutting fruit for breakfast. It was a simple scene, but it filled his heart with a strange feeling. It was a peace he thought he would never find again. Jada grinned, proudly showing her father that she had drawn her first picture yesterday, a sunflower. "I chose sunflowers because they always face the sun, just like us," Jada said, her eyes sparkling. Jordan talked about his dream of becoming a pilot, his eyes lighting up every time he looked up at the blue sky. Selina sat next to him, unable to contain her proud, emotional smile. Isaiah was silent for a long time, then said in a low voice, "I used to think that life had only two colors, black and white, winning and losing. But thanks to you, I know that the world has countless other colors. And thanks to Selena, I know what the light of kindness is." He looked at Selena. His sincere eyes made her look down, confused, but inside she felt a surge of warmth. After the trial, Isaiah became the focus of the media. He was invited to speak at many major events, from business conferences to social forums. But in those appearances, he did not talk much about business, but mainly emphasized the message money can build a castle, but only love can build a home. His words resonated, shared by millions. The movement calling for a change in attitudes in wealthy families towards domestic workers and logistics staff began to spread. Selena unintentionally became a symbol, called the light bearer. However, life is not all roses. Harold Whitmore, who once opposed the Carter family, now faces many accusations, but he has not disappeared. From the shadows, Harold still tries to spread rumors, hoping to obscure the belief in Isaiah and Selena's story. When Isaiah heard this news, he did not get angry. He simply told the reporter calmly, "Darkness only exists when the light is not strong enough. Our job is to continue to light more lamps." These words were not only for Harold, but also for those who suffer from prejudice and injustice out there. One day, Isaiah took Jada and Jordan to a special school where many children who had been abandoned or had difficult circumstances gathered. He wanted his children to understand that the light they received was not just for themselves, but also for sharing. Jada taught the children how to draw flowers. Jordan excitedly told stories about airplanes. Selena stood outside the classroom, watching them shine among their friends, feeling an indescribable satisfaction in her heart. She knew that the real miracle was not just the eyes opening, but the heart opening. That night, after sending the children to bed, Isaiah sat with Selena in the living room. He poured 2 cups of tea, his voice low. "Selena, I lost Maya, and I thought I would lose my family too. But it was you who made me realize that family is not just blood, but those who stay and light up the darkness with you. I don't know how to thank you enough." Selena clenched her teacup, her heart pounding. But she calmly replied, "I didn't do it because I wanted to be thanked. I did it because they deserved to be loved. And you too, Isaiah." At that moment, neither of them needed to say anything more. Between them, an invisible bond was woven from pain, challenges, and finally healing. The following month, the Carter Group officially launched a charitable foundation called Light Within. The foundation supports research into rare childhood diseases and provides grants to families with visually impaired children. Isaiah named Jada and Jordan as the foundation's mascots, a reminder that hope can always spring from the most hopeless places. On the day of the fund's launch, Jada stepped onto the stage, her voice trembling. "I used to live in the dark, but thanks to someone who believed in me, I saw the light. I want all the kids out there to have the same opportunity as me." The audience erupted in applause, many in tears. Selena sat in the front row, her eyes filled with tears, her heart about to burst. After the ceremony, a reporter asked Isaiah, "Do you believe in miracles?" He smiled. "I believe in the power of people. Miracles happen when we give each other faith and compassion. Selena and my children have taught me that." The Carter family's story didn't stop at the newspaper columns or television cameras. It spread into real life, touching the hearts of millions of Americans. Parents began to spend more time with their children. Many bosses and business owners re-examined how they treated their employees. And in each family, the question, "Are we living in the light?" gradually became a reminder. Late at night, As the city fell silent, Isaiah stood by the window of his study, looking up at the starry sky. Jordan and Jada slept peacefully in his room, and Selena knitted a scarf by the fireplace. He closed his eyes, and in the wind he heard Maya whisper, "You did it." A tear fell, but this time it was not from pain, but from relief. The Carter family has gone through the darkness to find light not only in the eyes of their 2 children, but in the hearts of everyone. And that light will continue to guide those who are struggling to find hope in life. The Carter family story is not only about the miracles of restored eyes, but also a reminder that love is the true light in life. No matter how rich, powerful, or knowledgeable we may be, there will be times when all of those things are powerless before human pain. Only love, patience, and trust between people can make the seemingly impossible happen. For older audiences, this story also evokes a familiar truth as age piles up. We realize that happiness does not lie in material things, but in simple moments with family, in a tight hand, in a loving look. The lesson from Isaiah and Selena is know how to see the light in each other, even when the world is filled with darkness. Because in the end, the strongest light is not outside, but in our hearts. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this emotional story. Hopefully, the story has touched your heart and brought you a little light, a little hope to continue walking in life. If you find it meaningful, please click, like, share, and subscribe to the channel to give us more motivation to bring more profound and healing stories. Sincerely, thank you.